Good morning. Did you guys have music?
No, we didn't have music.
I didn't either.
We missed the soothing start, the lullaby as it goes into play.
Like, what happened, Restream? Did you guys have music?
No. Uh-oh. We've got echo going on.
No, that was YouTube. I was worried that the music didn't happen. So I clicked on the YouTube to see. I was like, is this just my tab that's doing this? Like, what is this? Anyway, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Coffee Table Talks. Grab a cup and circle up. I'm so sorry you didn't get the lovely, yoga studio music. I'm so sad.
I need Ben on a Friday.
I needed it. It's meditative. Everybody meet Joe. Hi, Joe. So, it's Davis.
That's right.
You know, the SecureNation CEO's last name is Davis.
There are a lot of us out there.
Oh.
No, you're one of a kind.
Don't get me started about the genealogy I've been doing.
That's special. Oh, I actually did that the other day. I found out that my great-great-grandfather was an Irish Catholic in Virginia that bought like some obscene amount of acreage for, I think it was like $50.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody had defaulted on a loan and they were walking down the street and picked up on that bad boy. So if you guys ever look into what do they call it? The Tri-City area. It's like Kingsport and Gate City and something else. Like in that whole little, my grandmother always told me she was a hillbilly, so I'm just going to say it. In that whole little hillbilly area, the Hagans, I'm a that apparently. So, me. I was like, cool. I really am a little Irish. Like, everybody's like, oh, I've got Irish, especially on St. Patrick's Day.
I used to walk around insisting I had no Irish in me for no other reason that I didn't think I did. And then I got my 23andMe back and I'm like, whoa. I'm like 60% English Irish, right?
Right, exactly. That's
never culturally identified with any of it except for the last name.
That's awesome. So where are you actually? I didn't even ask that yet. I'm in Baton Rouge. Will is in Arizona, Tucson, right? And then everybody else comes. We're global, by the way. We've had people come and hang out on our stream from like the other side of the world. They're chilling. And it's like, we're all like, good morning. And they're like, good evening. And I'm like, good night. So anyway, where are you at?
I'm in the Boston area. Big distinction though. I didn't grow up here. Just a caveat, and love it or hate it, I grew up in northern New Jersey.
Okay, so you don't get a glass of water for a quarter.
Yeah, my accent's kind of a mix. The Bostonians are just south of Boston. They give me a hard time for my Jersey accent, and when I go back to New Jersey, as I do, I get a hard time for my Boston accent. So who the hell knows? I mean, can I say hell?
My mother-in-law grew up on the Cape, and so she could not say an R for anything.
Well, unless it's soda, because I have heard it pronounced soda. So it's like it's switched. It's things that need R's don't get R's; they get AH's, and that have A's get R's. That's fine.
I'm not even gonna try. Like, there's my friend Amanda Lemoy. There's like 7 families, Cajun families in South Louisiana, and they all know each other. Like there's the Landrys, the Lemoynes, the Guitros, the Gotros, I don't know, whatever. They all have their own bayou. But she does a really good, and I wouldn't say it's an impression because it's actually like that's her whole family. That's how they talk, is in a very distinct accent. I am not good at accents. I'm not even going to try at all. Like, ever.
Is that where you grew up though, or did you find yourself there?
No, I found myself here. Yeah, I just woke up one day and I was like, oh, here we are. Oh, I think I'll stay. They got good food. No, I'm actually from Indiana originally, central Indiana, the middle of boring nowhere.
Anyone could say that about where they're from.
Look, here's another one. Sorry, there's a lag on it, but Paul that's another name that's around here. Look, Paul, come message me. I know some Daggles, okay? I know where your family are. Anyway. Sorry.
You just got to remember, everywhere you go, there you are.
Yeah.
So if you're an exciting person, you'll find exciting things to do in the middle of nowhere.
I do. I'm very well self-entertained.
I'm starting to learn that more and more as I get older, is that I used to call New England my self-imposed exile, because I came up here originally. I came up here to go to medical school in Vermont. Mm-hmm. And leaving what I consider to be the inner city, because I was doing most of my undergrad studies right outside of Newark, New Jersey, and spent a lot of time in the hospitals, working in the hospitals in that area. Very, very exciting stuff. A lot of very interesting injuries in that area. And I got to the point where, I'd be walking to the post office. That's what we did back in the early 90s and late 80s. We'd walk to the post office, and I would hear gunshot. And I'd go, I really want to go somewhere more peaceful.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I applied to all these med schools, and I got in all over the place. But my, it was like, oh, Vermont. They had a great program. It was like you were clinical right away. You didn't have a lot of book study before you started getting clinical. And I was like, oh, perfect. And then I move up there, and I'm going, I'm gonna lose my mind. I can't be here anymore. It's like I felt like it was on an island. But now it's a little more modern.
That's awesome. So medical background.
Yeah.
That's fun, right? Everybody gets into cybersecurity or IT and from some weird place. I have noticed.
I was into it before the medical background. The medical thing was, if I'm going to be honest, it was really imposed upon me. It was one of those, I lost a bet kind of things where my parents really, really wanted me to be a doctor.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I came from a family that it could have been that way, but thank goodness they had no hopes for me. So now I
can be anything I want to be, even though, like just maybe 5 or 6 years before that, the FBI was calling my house, telling my mother to make me stop it because there was no law against what I was doing, breaking into ARPANET or whatever. But, it was one of those things where, maybe we can distract him if we give him a scalpel, and a stethoscope, right?
Nothing wrong with that combination.
So your parents, they wrote a book, right? Like there's a book on parenting by Joe Davis's parents.
No, please no.
Kid misbehaving? Line him up with a scalpel.
Oh, I was like, we were talking before the show started. We were talking about hacking, and I was doing all kinds of stuff. I was, mixing. I was just like, I got a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook off of a BBS, and I'm like, oh, let me try this, let me try that. Not good for a preteen, who's got time on his hands.
I'm actually talking to a teenager now. I don't know what kind of, just for their own privacy, I'm going to be very vague, but it's really cool. So they're very interested in IT and in cybersecurity specifically, and are designing like these crazy phishing type websites and like sending me videos of them because I've asked. I'm like, this is cool. What are you building? Like, I want to see. And I could see, I mean, there's a lot of talent out there hanging out in the teenage land, and they are dangerous.
There always has been. You go way back to phone phreaking. Who was phone phreaking? It was mainly kids. Yeah.
Because you can't pay for long distance when you don't have a job.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was just like, well, what happens when I press this series of buttons? What happens when I blow this frequency into the receiver? Because it's when someone tells you don't do it, that was like, you might as well just open the floodgates at that point. Like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. Or this will go on your permanent record. I was always after my permanent record. I'm like, where is this thing? I want to see what it says. Difficult patient, difficult student. Ask stupid questions that you shouldn't be asking, right?
So that's where a lot of my career got started, right? Because I was in charge of a high school lab. You want to have a whole unique set environment to try and protect and take care of. You take a whole bunch of fairly smart kids and give them lots of time so they have nothing to do. And you have a network where your insiders want to bring the network down.
Yeah, and they get emboldened by each other. I mean, they egg each other on, right? I remember meeting up with kids at the mall. Surprise, surprise! I lived in northern New Jersey, and kids I never knew before from the surrounding area. We somehow cajoled our parents all to drive us to the mall. We would meet up and like make plans to go dumpster diving at Bell Labs or behind the Board of Education to see what we could get, as far as manuals were concerned, or passwords, or how does a certain type of a switch work, and just those types of things. And back then it wasn't really frowned upon. And then war games came out, and people were like, "Oh, that's just fiction."
No, it is not. Definitely not. It's happening all the time. It's I've said it before on other streams, so sorry for the repeat offenders that come and hang out. But I mean, there's a false sense of security across the board, and it's really sad whenever you go into just regular general population and they have no care or consideration for their own privacy or their own security measures that they take personally on their own level. Like, no, I don't want to turn on MFA because it's tedious, right? I don't know.
User friendly.
Right. And I'm like, do you know that this is all held together with shoestring and duct tape?
Oh, don't look behind the curtain. Sausage factory. It really is. I always say, privately, now I'm saying it publicly, it's like, I've worked for some very large companies, no names mentioned. Go to my LinkedIn profile. And it's, I think not 30 years in, because I'm only 26 years in, but about 20 years in, I said to myself, or I said to my family, I don't know how anything gets done. How do products get to the shelves?
Yeah.
How do patients get cured of their ailments? I don't understand how this, with the mayhem that's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. It's amazing to me that anything gets done in a capitalist world, but it does. So, but I mean, I think we have a segment of the population, probably the majority of the population, that want to put their heads in the sand and go, I just make it go away. I don't want to have to multi-factor. I don't want to have to, use a different password for all my logins. I'll use the same one. And threat actors will take advantage of that. And I, as a young kid, there was no wrong or right back then. It was more like, oh, there's a tunnel over there. I want to see what's in it, or there's a closet and the door's open. I want to see what's in that closet, and then once I got a clue around ethics, obviously you kind of grow into that, as a high school student, as a college student, and so forth. And especially as a med student, then you realize, there's black hat, there's gray hat, and there's white hat.
Yeah.
And you have to make a decision what side you want to be on, what matters to you.
Yeah. That's that willful ignorance that you were talking about. That's a pet peeve of mine. Willful ignorance is probably one of the most toxic things on the planet. More so than just set it on fire. Like, really?
Right. Well, now I do things with one thing in mind. I do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Not any reward on the other side. I just want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah, I'm that way too. And people don't believe you when you say that, do they? They're like, no, there's got to be a hidden agenda.
No, not really. I mean, in the long run, burning everything to the ground, where it's going to come back and bite you. Not just sanctions wise, but I mean, if you knock out, like we were talking about before we went live, you knock out, the telephone system in the East Coast, which probably is not going to happen. I'm knocking on wood here, but you also can't make a phone call. Never mind, if you're that selfish that you're not thinking about, the people who are dialing 911 looking for, medical aid or, help with someone who's trying to kill them or something like that. You're also inconveniencing yourself. So everything you do has ripple effects and consequences. You have to be very cognizant of that.
Yeah, definitely. And so with your medical background and then your current role with Microsoft, I mean, it makes sense why now is it starting to make sense to everybody why Rachel was like, we're going to talk to Joe about Murderbot5000s, which, by the way, is something that a dear friend of mine and two other good friends of mine, on their very fun Thursday night situation, on LinkedIn, we call the show. They talked about several episodes back. You guys got to go check it out. Anywho, it's Chris Roberts and Evan Franson and Ryan Cloutier, but they were talking about Murderbot5000s, and then it happened. It aligned so well, Joe, that you and I were talking because Josh works for Shark Ninja, the robot vacuum blender people. So if you want to talk about Murderbot5000, I'm like, can we get a shark vacuum with a blender on it? That would
Robot wars, in real life. That
we get tests of stuff, and right now we have two robots. One's a vacuum self-emptying thing, and the other one is like a mop and vac, but it doesn't self-empty because first world problems, and I want it all. But they collide with each other constantly, and so I was definitely thinking that we should get a blender on top of there. And then we were talking about medical stuff. And I think I came across you through that piece of the conversation. And I was like, that's it. Let's talk about all the stuff that can kill you. I'm not as sweet as I look, you guys. I'm real dark on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, I think things that could kill you have been out there since snake oil salesman, right? But now we've got the singularity making decisions around it, right? Or we're getting there anyway. Yeah, I'm not really sure about his politics. Let me blast his pacemaker or his insulin pump or something. Those those are the things that potentially would worry me if I was to live 10 years longer than I will probably. We're not there yet, but it's a little unnerving that there's state-sponsored criminals in our infrastructure. I'll call them criminals because they're doing something we don't want them to do. That can do things like, we were talking before about turning on the lights green at the same time, or making sure those centrifuges blow up without anyone realizing it, those types of things. So when we start to talk about connected medical devices, that's when things get a little scary. Although it is really the 80-20 rule. Not all of us are walking around with connected medical devices, but I'm not wearing my Apple Watch today. I don't think I am anyway. But those days are coming.
Yeah, they really are. So the current state of affairs, from what I know, which I do a little digging, but not a whole lot. What is something that I think is going to continue to happen unless there's somebody out there that's going to be the go fix it guys. So large medical equipment for hospitals and stuff, millions and millions of dollars, right?
Oh yeah.
Running on like way out of date, end of life OS.
Right, because you got to replace the whole darn thing in order to upgrade it. And I keep telling the people, not just the people I work with, but people haven't been in the field, I should say. So they're, that kind of divides up into two parties. People have been in the field and been exposed to this problem, and others who are like, oh, just upgrade it to Windows 10. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, it does not. You can't do that. So then you have these, devices that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, right? Like the MRI machine's going to work.
Right.
But there's a very real, isn't there a gas on the inside of that if it's released, it would knock out all of the phones or something for 2 or 3 floors?
Oh my gosh.
That's a problem.
We don't have time to talk about the consequences, but I think the solutions, I mean, the brownfield, and that's what it's been called, at least in the industry, is that brownfield. All those devices are already out there that it would take either a massive expensive recall, or we'd have to, pull these devices out of their moorings in order to replace them. And that's just not happening. How do we protect those guys and gals? How do we make sure those devices aren't going to kill someone? And really that's an industry problem to solve. That's up to us to solve.
And I know some hospital and medical groups that the security teams are actually, kind of trying to build a test environment. So whenever they do bring in new IoT type devices, they can run it. Will, you remember talking, I introduced the two of you. We won't say names or anything because I don't want to spoil it. It's for their PhD project. But anyway, are working on putting this together to make a mock-up of the actual network and then bring IoT devices in as they come in, and kind of test them out and, smash them against a wall kind of situation to see what they can see, right? Which is the hacker mentality anyway. But anyway, sorry, Will.
You brought up in the earlier, Joe, when we were talking, the big driver that is just hitting our industry all over the place is go to market, go to market, go to market, right? And so how do we get things from your perspective and from what you've learned and know, how can we get things to the perspective of we've got to design this and engineer this, folks, to be ready to be upgraded, to be ready to, respond to some of these big issues? Because when it does get to the life and death situation, when it does get to that point to where something ugly happens, people are going to want answers right away.
Unfortunately, I think it has to come top down. It's got to be company culture. And it's one of the reasons I find myself at Microsoft. And this is not an ad for Microsoft. This is not an ad for me. But I truly believe in my heart, one of the reasons, because I had a couple of opportunities after I left my last place, a couple of other opportunities, and I could have went in different directions. And one of the reasons I went with Microsoft, I think table stakes was hearing Brad Smith and Satya Nadella say, privacy is a human right. And, that's like, no kidding. But there aren't many leaders of organizations at that level that will say something like that. So that was one. The other one was where, Satya said, we got to build privacy and security into everything we're doing. And we got to be as transparent as possible. And you've seen the effects of that in the last several weeks, where Microsoft has really tried to be as transparent as possible. Heck, we got a 0 day. Hey, let everyone know, especially in health and life sciences. We have a patch for this. It's not perfect. It's going to be difficult to install. We're working on it. We're going to make it better, but we have to tell them, because in the absence of telling them, it's going to be, our bug bounty folks are going to come out and say, look, we gave you manufacturers enough time to tell your customers that there's a problem here, and now we're going to tell them because you haven't, right? So really, that's one of the reasons I think it's that top-down transparency and that top-down understanding, and not, profit will come, right? But if you put profit first, if you put satisfying your stockholders first versus, again, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, that's, I believe, personally, this is Joe, this is not Microsoft, I think that's short-term thinking.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is very short-term thinking.
Because you're destroying trust.
Yep.
And then you might be destroying yourself. You might be destroying your organization, because how many organizations put profit first and you don't really talk about them anymore? I'm not going to name them, but they're out of business.
It's getting more and more to where terrible things that'll happen, there'll be a liability attached to that, because folks they're in legislative circles. It is getting to the point where it's like, no, you do have some responsibility. Sorry. So if you ignore those consequences, that's not pretty.
Actually, money's a great thing, and I'm a stockholder. I'm a stockholder of a lot of different companies, and I love quarter after quarter growth. Don't get me wrong, but if money's the priority, and to everything else, what's the end point? The end point is you got a whole bunch of money that's useless. There's nowhere to spend it, right? We're seeing this with COVID. I can't go to my favorite restaurant at this point. Because they're closed. Or if everybody's dead or ill, what happens to us overall? So you really got to think long term. You got to, that goes hand in hand with environmental issues. That goes hand in hand with social issues. It's a bigger ethical question about what your priorities need to be. And I think we go back to not only device safety, but safety and software, not security, but safety, right? When software is keeping, traffic lights running appropriately, the way they should be, cars running the way they should be, hospitals running the way they should be, that's when we start to talk about safety. So if you've got a 0 day on an Exchange server that's in the mix with respect to scheduling patients for life-saving surgery or life-saving procedures, you better know there's a 0 day on that Exchange server, and you better take care of it, right? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of downtime. Things are going to be a little annoying, but that's better than being off the grid for 3-4 days or maybe even 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And also the element that Exchange throws into play is all the proprietary elements and things of that company that are taking place conversationally, right? And so that creates such a greater depth to untangle. Yeah, it becomes difficult. And the whole SolarWinds concept of getting into the source, that
hard to find.
Opens up a whole new world to the upper echelons that, oh crud, we have to take care of this too, right?
Did you guys watch the Senate subcommittee hearing with Kevin and all that? Yeah, you did. Okay.
Like a nerd with popcorn.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, it was like new season of Handmaid's Tale or something. I was like, oh, I can't wait.
You can't make this up. You can't. Like, this is good TV, you guys.
It's so important because you saw senior senators, and senators have been around for a long time, but most of them got it. They were understanding that there needs to be a disclosure law. And again, oh, that's going to tear into profits. Well, yeah. But, forcing automotive companies to put in seatbelts and airbags did too, but only served to market their products. Now, you can't go, if you're watching TV, you can't go 20 minutes without hearing about, XYZ automotive makers' safety enhancements with their, 2020. This thing will automatically transport itself somewhere else if it's going to be in a collision, that kind of thing.
Do you think the general population is going to get to a point where they actually value safety in their software over everything else in the features like they did with automobials?
Well, that's the trouble. You need an educated consumer base. Cy Sims, who was a suit seller, I want to say that 10 times fast, out in the city area, used to say all the time, an educated consumer is our best customer. You have to have patients advocating for themselves. Like, what is this thing you're giving me? What is this thing you're putting inside of me? What is this thing you're hooking me up to? And unfortunately, a lot of times they're not conscious when they get, they should be asking that question because especially in an emergency situation. But I think if enough patients go, we're fed up and we're not going to take it anymore. I'm afraid of this. That's when it starts to hit the wallet, right? And they do business somewhere else.
That's the big game changer, right? Is when it stops being just financial and starts becoming kinetic.
Yeah.
Right? Once the logical starts becoming the kinetic, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the only one who does this. Maybe it's based on the medical background, but anytime I have a surgical procedure, I ask the surgeon, well, what are you going to be using? What brand?
I don't.
And why?
I broke my leg a couple of years ago, and I just trusted the orthopedic surgeon.
Why do you prefer that stapler over this stapler? Oh, I'm the biggest PITA, pain in the when it comes to that. But actually, the two surgeons that I just most recently asked that question, I say most recently, once was 2012, I think the last time was 2015. They appreciated it. And so we got into this big conversation around the efficacy of certain products and why they go with one versus another, or why they like the products that I like, or why they don't like the products that I like. And that's great. I think that drives innovation. I think that drives in the industry anyway, that drives this concept of, okay, yeah, go to market's important, but getting it right's important too. Because if we go to market with a POS, medical group surgeons, whoever get to make the decisions around this stuff, they're going to go with the competitor.
So you bring up something that put a light bulb into my head, and you can tell, right? Because I'm super ADD and I can't form words whenever I'm having 400 thoughts all happening at the same time. Ask your doctor what it is that they're using. They appreciate the question, and you want to know as an informed consumer. Do you know how many people I sit on the phone with sitting across the virtual table from a proposed MSSP offering and nobody asks what they're using?
Right. Oh, I know.
I asked because I'm like, you need to know, but
well, it's human nature. I mean, things are a headache, and then sometimes you subconsciously. I sound like Freud, but the subconscious mind doesn't want to know, right? We build our reality around protecting ourselves from scary things in this world, right? My reality is that I'm going to walk outside later, grab lunch, and I'm not going to get run over when crossing the street.
yeah.
And same thing. It's like, well, I don't want to know that pilot only has 4 days of training, and he's going to fly me from Boston to Atlanta. I don't want to know.
See, that brings up another point about it too, right? Is the doctor themselves. Which one, if you had the choice and you knew and had the transparency available to you, would you want the doctor that graduated at the top of their class, or do you want the one that just barely made it out?
Bingo. Like, how many times have you asked your doctor, what school did you go to again? Are you an MD or an OD? Exactly. You can prescribe, right? Or, did you go to school in the Caribbean? And I'm not throwing shade at any of that, but
no, there's not. And some people, struggle with some, like I've struggled with some very real learning disabilities, like ADD. There's one for you, right? Watching words float off the page and I have to read the same passage like 7 or 8 times. That's super fun, you guys.
Oh yeah.
So it's struggles, right? I feel like I am a very capable professional. Thank you very much. But you know what? My motto was C's get degrees, baby. So let's get there.
MD. P equals MD. Pass equals MD.
Yeah, there you go.
Mainly pass fail. I don't know. It was back in the day. I would assume it still is.
But it was just, you struggle with some stuff, but you can look into something or somebody or just take that extra little second to dig just a little bit deeper to know exactly what it is that you're getting into or you're having put into yourself, right? In the case of medical devices. But yeah.
Well, then there's also the other aspect, right, where we, in the technology field, kind of have to blame ourselves to some degree. If we've created the system complex enough so that your standard user has no clue as to whether they're safe or not, right? Just take certificates, for example. How many folks would check the certificate of the website?
Oh, I do.
How they know what it is.
Just get me what I want. I'm not looking at that stuff. It's too technical for me. Right. And think about back in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Engineers were trusting people.
Yeah.
You look at the evolution of DNS, right? So it was host files in the beginning. DNS
was also only a university community then too.
Exactly. No one would ever put an incorrect host in a host file intentionally. Why would they do that, right? And DNS, of course, I'm going to ask it what the IP address of that site is or that service is, and it's going to give me the right answer. Why wouldn't it? That was really the way engineers thought and designed things back then. Like, no one would ever want to do this. No one would ever want to turn this hairdryer into a tea kettle. But yeah. And now it's industrialized. The crime is industrialized. So we've gone way past the, here's a 12-year-old with a screwdriver and a soldering iron, and we're into the, it's a branch of the military to figure out how stuff can break and how you can own it.
Yep. Criminality pays more in cybersecurity than being on the team of the good guys.
Unfortunately, it does. It pays a lot more.
Yep.
Yeah.
We are not in any way or shape or form, Will or I or Joe, advocating that you should go be a criminal. Okay. Wait a minute now.
Criminality has always paid more, right? I mean, we go back before things were connected. I mean, it always did, and it was high stakes, right? High risk, high reward, right? I'm gonna go try and count cards, and I can only do that for so long before the Vegas security figures it out, and then I get banned or I get arrested. That kind of thing.
I'm like, yeah, right. Broken legs and concrete shoes.
Yeah.
There is a point where you get to where you have really good income to getting free room and board, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the clothes are all the same color.
So the disclaimer's got to be, don't do anything bad.
You guys, this is so bad. I think I just announced live across a bunch of different media platforms that criminality pays, and I definitely was sitting in an InfraGard meeting on Tuesday with an FBI agent. I'm in trouble. Dang it. Well, that's a good place to end it, I think. So.
No, do good things. Do good things. Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Do good. Save the world. Dang
There's
it.
a lot of
And the
people
money
making a
will
lot of
come.
good money protecting too. So
That's right. Mission before money, folks. That's what Evan Franson says, and I believe it.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Mission before money, always. Do good in this world. Thank you, Joe, for coming and hanging out and having coffee.
dude.
We need a cup that was like the cup of Joe, right?
I have my coffee cup right here, but it's empty, unfortunately.
I know. Look, that's the other thing that always tells me it's time to go. It's because I'm like, dang it. I need more, but everybody's gonna be real mad if they're just looking at an empty chair for a few minutes. So thanks everybody. The FBI doesn't know that criminality pays. Thanks, Paul. Oh, Ricky made it. Good. Anyway. Thanks, Joe, again. This has been fun. This is gonna be one that I replay later and go, God, what was I thinking? It's gonna be great. Anyway, any closing remarks? Anybody?
Well, just we're coming up to 2 big holiday weekends. Take a break from COVID, and gather safely and enjoy. Hopefully, you're taking some time off if you're of the persuasion, and relax and get some of your sanity back.
I'm in academia. That just doesn't work.
Will's like, what's time off? Sleeping.
Spring break, Easter, Passover, those type of things. If like I said, if you're of that persuasion.
Oh my gosh, we're going to the beach with the family. It's
Sounds
gonna
good.
be fun. Like the extended family. Anyway, y'all come back next week. Come see us again. We got events posted. I actually did some good things and did them ahead of time for the next 2 weeks. One of them I'm gonna have to change the time on. But anyway, come hang out again. We're gonna have a CISO in transition next week, hanging out with us with a cup of coffee. Thanks again, Joe. Thanks, Will, for always letting me torture you live in front of a internet audience. Super fun.
Thank you. This was great.
We'll talk to y'all again.